Hello everyone, it's been a while since I posted a video on here. I have been meaning to do so, but I reached a point where I felt as if I needed to process everything I'd learnt so far. And before I posted my first video on here, I thought very carefully about the commitment that I was making. Sharing my thoughts and showcasing myself so publicly on social media was a step out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to make sure I got the tone just right. I've tried to be clear from the start that I don't consider myself as a perfect person by any means, or as an expert on race-related discrimination, but when I opened my eyes to the severity of the race inequality in the UK, I felt eager to learn more, to try and understand why I'd lived, or how I'd lived my life for nearly 30 years and never noticed the extent of this before. And the more that I learned, the more that I felt compelled, and the more that I wanted to share what I had learnt with others that may be interested, and in some cases are on a similar journey themselves. And naturally, as I've been so forthcoming about views on such a delicate and serious matter, I have had a mixed reaction from both strangers and people I know. The negative comments have been frustrating at times, but I consider myself privileged that I've not received the level of abuse that I've seen other people receive on social media. Some people have tried to insult me by calling me woke, which I actually take as a compliment, and some people have told me to have a day off. Some people have described me as vain, which I take with a pinch of salt. I've had some difficult and at times heated conversations with both strangers and friends. The majority of these conversations I felt ended up being constructive, but there have been some that have been less so. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it reminds me of one of the videos I posted earlier in the year, which was a conversation I had with Glenn Chisholm, and he spoke about the fight he has had against racism his whole life, and he used the word exhausting. He said it was exhausting experiencing racism, which obviously I haven't. He said it was exhausting talking about racism, and he said it was exhausting justifying why you're talking about racism. And I've started to get just a minor taste of what he means by that, minor taste. But I'm able to switch off at the end of the night. So for someone who experiences racism and someone who's unable to switch off, it must be so exhausting. I'm starting to get what he means. And there's some people who are just so hell-bent on trying to dismiss the idea and refuse to open their minds to any realisation of social ethics that might make them feel uncomfortable. The positive messages of support have been quite heartening, so thank you for those. I'm quite realistic with my expectations on what I can achieve myself. I'm fully aware that I am just a standard guy with an average following on social media, but the motive behind these videos, it comes from an ideology that for real change to happen in society, it has to come from the bottom up as well as the top down. And that means communities, friends and connections engaging in reasoned conversation. And for those of you that have been following and responding, I think maybe you share the thought that this ideology has the potential to create real change. And whilst I've spent some time in the dark depths of Twitter recently, I've stumbled across lots of similar social media accounts from across the country and across the world of people having similar conversations. I've started these videos equipped with a massive energy, and as I was learning, I was so keen to share all of this with everybody as soon as possible. I drafted up a schedule at one point to post content every day, so it was because I felt I was in a race with myself to try and share with others what I've learned. And I wanted to do that as quickly as possible. And after speaking with a few different people, mainly people who have been trying to get this message across to people for a long time, I realised that this wasn't necessarily the best way to do this. For a start, I'm not the first person to learn this information, and it had always been available for me to research. And all I was doing was joining the many people around the world who are also trying to share this information and campaign for racial equality, and had been doing for a long time. So realistically, I know that it wasn't necessarily about the content that I shared, but more the way that I share the content. And one really eye-opening conversation that I had with one of my friends, Paris, who's a local artist in Ipswich, he said something to me that really sunk in, that our current generation are the first in history to have the resources available to educate themselves on pretty much any matter or topic at the tip of their fingers. Now we have smartphones, we can really educate ourselves with more or less an unlimited range of accredited sources, and as it stands, I think we're being wasteful of these. More and more of us are becoming aware of the biased education that we've received in our curriculum at school, and the propaganda that we've endured by the leaders of our state. And this isn't just specific to the UK, like this is any country in the world will look to sculpt their education to the people to benefit the country, and history will always be written in favour of those who had the better side of it. So that's not a UK problem, but it's not an exclusively UK problem, but it is a problem in the UK as well as every other country. And at school, I and most of us, certainly my age, were taught about all of the great things that Britain did across the world, and there are so many great things, and what a great hero Winston Churchill was, and he was a great leader during World War II, and how we defeated the Nazis with the help of a couple of other countries, and we were pivotal in defeating Hitler in World War II. But now that we have the resources to be able to learn a less biased version of these events, we can find out about all of the atrocities that the British Empire committed and the effects that they still have today. And we can find out about, what an inhumane fascist Winston Churchill was at times, and how we helped Russia and the United States as well as many other allies defeat Hitler, and it wasn't just us. And Paris helped me to realise that for real progress to happen as a society, we need to embrace this opportunity and change our culture and mindset when it comes to wanting to educate ourselves and learn more. And one thing that this year has taught me is the power and potential that listening has. When I watched the video interview with Akala and James O'Brien, Akala said the three most underused words are "I don't know." And it really resonated with me that for both self-development and for the development of society, more of us should be open to listening to what others have to say instead of just waiting for our turn to speak. And this actually stems back to Greek philosophy, I think. So with this, I've spent the last month digesting and processing the information that I've received so far, and there have been a few reoccurring topics that have come up which I'm going to talk about for the rest of this video, and one of which is the meaning of the words Black Lives Matter and people's interpretation of these words. For me personally, when I speak about Black Lives Matter are three powerful words that hit home and symbolise a movement and an active attempt to force real positive change towards worldwide equality. Some others have criticised the Black Lives Matter movement by direct association with the American political organisation Black Lives Matter, that have specific political agendas and manifestos, some of which include ideas that others may deem as extreme. But when I talk about Black Lives Matter, I'm talking about the words Black Lives Matter. And I think generalising all racial equality activist movements that use the word Black Lives Matter with the US political movement is deflective, dismissive, and counterproductive. In some cases, I think it's an example of fragility and choosing not to face up to inconvenient truths. And something that also has been mentioned is that for us to achieve racial equality, we need to campaign for equality as a whole for all minority groups. That includes gender equality and a greater acceptance of the LGBTQ community. being a white heterosexual male, I'm lucky enough to be on the more privileged side of all of these groups, and throughout my life I have learnt about all of these inequalities from the outside looking in, which inevitably stunted my progress. And if it wasn't for the Me Too movement, I wouldn't have learnt so much about how some of my actions and behaviour towards women, without even realising it, could have come across as derogatory and patronising. And if it wasn't for listening to my friends about their experiences of coming out, I wouldn't have realised the damage that so-called light-hearted homophobic jokes or comments could have on those that haven't yet had the courage to come out. And if it wasn't for the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement this year, I wouldn't have opened my eyes to the subtle and relentless suffering that so many of my black friends and black people on the whole have endured, compared to the comparatively trivial battles that I've faced. And without these movements and without people speaking out and engaging in conversation, we can't achieve progress. And the more we do it, the more we accelerate progress. And it seems as if recently minority groups have started to gather in solidarity, which I think is only a great thing, because the history of civilization is plagued with states trying to deflect the anger of the oppressed. And instead of the oppressed rising up against the state and trying to force change, the state deflects the anger amongst each other. So instead of the anger being vented towards the institution, the oppressed attack each other, and people coming together as one can only be a positive thing. So for me, I'm going to continue to primarily concentrate on my education towards racial equality, and that is what the content of my blogs will continue to be. And I plan to post some more in the near future. And as well as that, I'm looking to get involved in other ways to help in the local community. I've spoken to some people already, and if anyone else has any ideas in Ipswich or any recommendations, then please do let me know. Anyway, have a good day.